Now, a further question is, just who the hell are these R-strategist males? So these would be the men who are interested in multiple sexual partners, low emotional investment, and low post-sexual investment, say, in any resultant children. And we know the answer to that. R-strategist males are narcissistic, Machiavellian, psychopathic, and sadistic. And so what that means, I think, as far as I can tell, is that when you free up women to be sexually available with the technological transformation, you both deliver them into the hands of R-strategist males who have all the lovely personality features that I just described, or maybe something even worse is that you train men who might otherwise be high investment maters to adopt a R strategy with all of the psychopathy and Machiavellianism and narcissism and sadism that goes along with that. And so this is a very perverse outcome because, and I guess I don't really know what people expected to begin with. You said that, for example, you implied that, women are pursuing their freedom, let's say, with regards to untrammeled sexual access on the reproductive front. But that's not exactly a freedom. It's more like a subjugation to sexuality as the prime motivator in life, right? I mean, you could identify yourself with your sexuality, which is, of course, what people are doing in spades now. But the idea that the opportunity, the ability to pursue untrammeled sexual expression is actually a manifestation of freedom is an error if you believe that untrammeled subjugation to biological whim doesn't constitute freedom. This is especially true if it turns out that it's delivering women into the hands of psychopathic men, which seems to be the case.
There's a great deal of truth in that, and really that speaks to it speaks to the epigraph, actually, which I gave the second part of the book, which comes from Horace. I'm not going to try and quote the Latin at you, but the translation is, "You can drive nature out with a pitchfork, but still she comes back." It's a very famous quote. I think I've taken it slightly mischievously out of context, but it's a very important piece because the governing theme of the transhumanist era is using technology to try and abolish our nature. And really, that's the governing theme, the governing project of the transhumanist era, which is the point where we embrace or as we hope, the power of technologies to transform ourselves. So we're no longer industrializing the world. We're no longer using machines to, say, make weaving easier. Instead, we're using technologies to remodel ourselves, to make us more like we think we ought to be. At least that's the idea. And that really begins with the contraceptive pill, which is a medical technology, the original utopians, the first wave of feminist responses to the pill, were hugely optimistic about what it would do. I mean, we're some decades further down that track now, and we can see that it hasn't really worked out like that. And our mutual friend Louise Perry recently wrote a very persuasive book detailing all of the ways it hasn't really worked out like that, and all of the ways which, as you've just outlined, the sexual revolution was considerably more to the benefit of are selected, all these narcissistic, psychopathic, highly sexed and not particularly fatherly men seem to have been the net beneficiaries of this technological transformation. Contra the utopians who imagined that it would open out a kind of sexual utopia in which everybody could be free to be themselves, women could finally express themselves free from the gossiping old ladies in the street and free from the risk of pregnancy, and it would make everything sort of sunshine and rainbows and kittens, and it would all be lovely. Now we know at this point that that's not exactly what happened. But really, this serves to illustrate the utopian spirit that people have brought to the project of technologizing ourselves using essentially biotech, beginning with the chemical intervention of the contraceptive pill. But we're considerably further down that path now. And at every stage, we've set about embracing new innovations in biotech in the hope, really, of remedying perceived flaws in our nature. whether that's a pill to stop us being sad, or whether it's a technology which will mean women's fertility no longer has to fall off a cliff at the age of 40, because now there are technologies which will enable her to go on having kids into her 50s or her 60s, or whatever. I mean, we could be here all evening enumerating the technologies, the opportunities and the biomedical advances. And at every stage, what happens is there's a utopian promise of being able to escape a previous embodied limit. There is a new set of constraints on us, if you like, aspects of our nature which were previously managed by social means, in the way that the difference between women's and men's reproductive role was previously managed by what now gets dismissively referred to as the sexual double standard, which was, in the area prior to reliable contraception, an extremely pragmatic measure, oriented at avoiding a proliferation of unwanted children within a community. So that's one example of a way, an asymmetry or some awkward aspect of our nature was managed socially in a way which just went away more or less overnight the moment technology came along that seemed as though it would fix the problem for us. And there have been countless other examples since then. And what invariably happens is you get a dividend of freedom, and then whatever it is that's been technologized in that way is then reordered to the market. And you see this very clearly with the sexual revolution, which promised a great utopian dividend of self-expression and free love and, everybody having orgies and it would be fine. And actually what it gave birth to was the porn industry, and it gave birth to a ballooning sex industry. Right. And now, 50 years on from that, we have Pornhub, which is one of the biggest websites, one of the most high grossing websites in the world, and which is already notorious for sex trafficking, for abuse, for countless other atrocities, and for coarsening the appetites of children, frankly, who are the majority of its consumers, and much else besides. But really what I want to emphasize there is the dynamic at work. We think technologizing ourselves will liberate us from some aspect of our nature. What in fact happens is that aspect of our nature becomes opened up to commerce, and in the meantime our nature is unchanged. So the differences, as you pointed out, the differences between men and women in terms of mating strategies and courtship preferences and so on are still there. Our mutual friend Louise Perry sets this out very clearly in the case against the sexual revolution. Men still want slightly different things out of a date to women, on average. Of course, there are outliers, but women still broadly want an affectionate relationship. A subset of men, at least, are very happy with a quick sexual encounter and then no ongoing encumbrances. Though all the ancient dynamics are still very visibly there, nothing has changed. All that's happened is that the social mechanisms we had for trying to manage those asymmetries between the sexes have disappeared. They've bled away. They've been dissolved. And instead what we have is a seemingly limitless commercialization of the environment around them. We have whole industries, whether it's the dating app industry or whether it's the porn industry or whether it's the romance industry or you name it, whole industries which have grown up off the back of the dissolution of our social codes around sex and courtship. And if you look further, closer to the present at, for example, the reproductive industry, big fertility, you'll see that the dissolution, the technologization of ever further aspects of our nature in an effort to liberate us from its constraints. So to allow two men to liberate us, quote unquote, just so, for example, to allow two men to have a baby. Or to enable a man to resemble a woman, or any one of the other innumerable ways that we've set out to abolish our own nature, or to render it plastic and subject to our control. It never works. Humans still can't change sex. Two men still can't have a baby. Men still can't get pregnant. Those things, the fundamentals have not changed. Our nature is still there. All that happens is that it's made a whole lot of people rich because it's opened up new domains of our embodied selves to the market. And so really that's the story I set out to tell in part 2 of the book. And I also set out to show how this relationship to our own bodies, this pursuit of medical mastery of our own bodies, has been radically accelerated by the internet, and particularly by the very disembodied childhoods that a lot of young people now experience, where they grow up socializing fundamentally through digital avatars, and then take as a matter of basic social justice the idea that they should be able to reskin their meat avatar at will. and which is, combined with combined with social contagion and common emotional pathologies which have been typical in adolescent girls since time immemorial. The upshot has been, as we know, the social contagion of trans identities, which has had catastrophic and irreversibly harmful effects on thousands of girls now. And the detransitioner movement is growing. And I mean, these are familiar topics to you. But this is downstream of a kind of escalating fantasy of total mastery of our physical selves, and this fantasy of a physical self which is separable from our inner sense of ourselves, as though our bodies and ourselves are two separate things, which can seem believable if you spend a lot of time on the internet, but it isn't believable for a moment if you spend 9 months pregnant. For example, or fall over and break your leg, or really spend any time in the actual physical world at all.
Right.
And so that's the story I set out to tell in the second part of the book. And in the third, I set out to offer some reflections on where we are now and where we might go next, on the basis that we've already passed peak progress, and the heady 1990s years of having solved boom and bust and ended world conflict and so on, and all of those other things we were promised we'd achieved are not coming back, and that in fact life is likely to get worse.